Right, we're recording.
Thank you, Julian. I would like to call to order this morning the Hartford Subcommittee of the MARB. Today is August the 28th. The time is 10:10. We currently do not have a quorum, but we do want to get started with the meeting today. I did have a little bit of opening remarks, but I'm gonna hold those opening remarks because I don't have everybody with me today. There is something that's really important for all folks to be aware of, is that last night the House Bill 5269 passed and is going to be sent to the governor for approval, and that allows for remote meetings for public agencies can continue, and we can continue to conduct remote meetings. So I think that that is a critical decision that was made, especially in light of being able to attract and retain, you know, expert, board members. So I'm really excited about it. It's not about the convenience of it. It's about being able to attract great board members like we have on the MARB. So that's it for beginning. I'm going to ask for in the agenda for us to make a switch to accommodate the mayor, as he needs to leave this meeting by 10:30 today. So I'm asking to switch the agenda this morning to first discuss the mayor's recommended. We're going to review it. We're going to discuss it and take possible action on the mayor's recommended budget for FY23. Mayor, I'm going to turn that over to you now.
Thank you so much. Good morning. And again, my apologies for having to leave early, and I appreciate switching the order. I will be fairly brief in my presentation. I don't know that it's necessary to go through the slide deck that was provided, but hopefully it's useful to have. There are a few key slides on there, particularly the revenue summary and the expense summary slides, which are slides 7 and 8 on that deck. But I will just give a brief overview, hit some high points, and then I'm happy to answer any questions. And of course, Jen and team are happy to go into as much detail as the subcommittee would like. The short version of this budget is following. This is very much a status quo budget. It is consistent with our 5-year plan. The most significant change in this budget is that the mill rate is proposed to be reduced from 74.29 to 68.95. That is in response to the revaluation, which is a challenging revaluation because different categories of property fared differently. Residential values were up significantly, commercial values were down. So there is a shift, but there was a net increase in overall grand list, which gives us the opportunity to bring the mill rate down. And we wanted to try to provide as much relief to our homeowners and residential property owners as possible, while still remaining stable and sustainable. I believe this is it's a responsible place to be to end up at the 68.95. And I obviously want to stress, this is we have talked many times in the MARB and the MARB subcommittee about our long-term goal of bringing down the mill rate. Although different taxpayers will fare differently as a result of the reval, I am really proud that we're able to propose a reduction in the mill rate. 5 years after facing the financial crisis that was as acute as it was. Aside from that, I'll highlight a couple of key things. The budget, like all of our recent budgets, does not include any borrowing. It does not rely on any one-time revenues. It fully funds the ADEC, the annual pension contribution. If you look at slide 7 in the deck that was provided, which is a revenue summary, it summarizes the key changes. The drivers of revenue growth in this budget are two things. One, the increase in taxable property in the grand list as a result of the reval, offset, of course, by the decrease in the mill rate. It's a 7.2% decrease in the mill rate. As well as building in the increased pilot funding that was included in last year's state budget, but that was not included in last year's adopted city budget for FY22. This budget also does not include the $10 million corporate contribution that has been there in our most recent prior budget. And so we view that as a very positive thing that we're able to end our reliance on that source of revenue as we also lower the mill rate. Overall, the revenues and the expenditures, of course, are up 2.67% over last year's adopted budget, and of course we have that is the same as the increase in expenditures, and of course that increase in revenue is because that's how low we were able to keep the increase in expenditures. Shifting to expenditures, there are some modest increases. Obviously, a 2.67% increase across the board is a pretty modest growth rate, particularly in this environment. The increase is largely due to payroll and benefits, due to what we view as responsible wage increases, and modest increase, very modest increase in headcount. It's 12 positions citywide, 6 of which are in the Department of Public Works, and the remainder spread across multiple departments. There is an increase in the line item that is titled debt and increase in the line item that is titled debt and other capital, but really it's not in debt. It is the capital expenditure, which is back up at the $10.4 million level that we would like to sustain. As you may recall, last year that we dropped that to $6.4 million in the adopted budget, but we feel more comfortable including that line item at 10.4, and that's consistent with our plan. There's also an increase in utility expenditures, just driven by market conditions, and a very modest increase in vehicle equipment and technology, some necessary IT investment, and some equipment investment that we think is necessary both to provide for basic operations and also to avoid maintenance costs. Finally, there's an increase in the contingency from $2 million to $3 million. Still not as large a contingency as we want, but it is, again, consistent with the plan that we laid out last year, which called for a stepped up increase in contingency this year. That's the quick summary. On the education side, education funding is kept stable, but given the enrollment trends, that translates into an increase in per student expenditures, per student support from the city to the Board of Ed. And I think you all know this, but just to stress, we don't, when I say we don't rely on any one-time revenues in this budget, that also includes American Rescue Plan funding. We do not rely on American Rescue Plan funding to balance the proposed budget. That's the quick high-level summary. I'll stop there so there's time for any questions to me, and then of course the team can carry on if questions go beyond my time this morning. But I appreciate the chance to present it.
I just realized my mic was off. Thank you, Mayor. Are you able to see the slide deck that I'm sharing or not? Yes. Okay. Perfect.
I have it. I can't see what page you're on, but I have the deck in front of me.
Okay, I have you on page 8 as you were working, as you were talking through it. I did put it up. Thank you for running us through the highlights, and I do appreciate it. I'm going to reach out. I see Mr. White has his hand up already, so go ahead, Bob.
Good, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Just a specific question and a general one. A specific has to do with Mira and trash. I haven't gone through the whole budget, but I know they're not going to be taking trash anymore, and you've got another plan. I'm just wondering, number one, what the economic impact of that is and whether it's a long-term solution. And the second is more one of confidence. I see that as before, there are budget shortfalls predicted for the out years, as you've candidly told us. And I'm just wondering at your level of confidence at the mitigation measures being able to do that. And I know that's a that's certainly a complicated question. But those are my two questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Great question. So the first one is, if I understand the question correctly, they're asking if our solution for our own waste disposal is a sustainable solution. Is that the question?
Yes, and the economic impact.
Okay. Yeah. So we did shift away from MIRA. We put out an RFP and selected Murphy Road Recycling. That is a multi-year contract. So I am confident that I think in the years ahead, I believe we'll have far more stability from that new contract than we would have had we stayed with MIRA. I think MIRA's future is very much in doubt. And we were able to lock in rates that are below what we would have paid with MIRA. So it's a cost savings relative to prior projections. With respect to, now I will say that MIRA's long-term or even short-term operations does have an impact on our budget in a different way. We do have a $1.5 million pilot that we've received from MIRA, which is down from roughly $5 million about 5 years ago. That $1.5 million is included in the MIRA budget this year, but I do think it's very much at risk as MIRA's future is at risk. So hopefully that answers the first question. On the second question, you're correct that there are shortfalls projected in the out years. I will say a couple things. One, I think we retain a fairly modest growth assumption in our out years, and I feel confident that we will be able to mitigate the projected shortfalls.
Thank you.
Mr. Waxenberg.
A couple things. On the property tax.
But with apologies, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but there's one thing I should have added. I feel confident with one caveat, which is if we continue to see the levels of inflation and wage pressure that we see right now, that could be a game changer that requires us to review a lot of assumptions down the road.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor.
I know you're pressed for time, so quickly, regarding the property tax reval, you have that phase in for single property tax owners. Is there a change in that? In other words, I don't know what the percentage was last year. Is there a percentage increase this year that may offset the?
Sure.
Go ahead. I'll let you.
Sure. You're talking about the assessment ratio for residential property?
Yes.
Yeah. There is an increase in that driven by the formula that's in state statute. It's less. The increase in the assessment ratio is less than the decrease in the mill rate, but there is an increase.
Okay, so property tax owners probably would see a decrease in their taxes, even though there's a ratio increase.
Not necessarily, because it depends on the valuation of their property.
Right.
And in this reval, residential property was up substantially.
Yeah. Okay. All right. The budget, I assume, budgets for full complements of staff.
Yeah.
And also, what about the health insurance? Do you budget for health insurance for a full complement, regardless of vacancies, or do you just budget for actual numbers that are in it?
It's a great question. We do. I'll let Jen take this, but I think the short answer is we do build in some attrition assumptions, but those attrition assumptions are conservative. Jen?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Mr. Waxenberg. So we budget the health insurance based on the number of lives that were covered in December of the year prior to the next year. So as of December 2021, that's the number of lives that are baked into the budget with a contingency included in that. So it's not over budgeted.
And Jen, just to we don't need it now, but for a future date, I think I requested across all departments, including fire and police, what you have for full complements in the budget versus what you actually have in bodies. My assumption is that you're going to have vacancies that you carry over annually. Unfortunately, that's historic in all budgets. And obviously you fill the gap with overtime in certain areas. But if you could get that information, that would be helpful, okay? I know we've asked for the board and the board has provided it. And I would ask the same for the city side, please.
Sure. Mr. Waxenberg, we provided that for as of January. Do you want something more up to date?
No, if you provide it and I missed it, then I'll ask Julian, who is on board, to resend it to me, and I appreciate it.
Yep, absolutely. But if you have any other questions, we're happy to provide you the other information as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Shaw.
Thanks, Ms. Kennison. Good morning, Mayor Bronin.
Good morning.
Thank you for the presentation, and I apologize for my delay to the meeting. I did want to understand how what the trends look like for the city's contribution to its pension fund, and curious to know where in the expenditure categories the annual employer contribution would be included.
Sure. I'm going to let, if it's okay, I'm going to let Jen handle that question. I actually have to drop off. I apologize.
No worries.
It's probably a long answer that I'll have, but I know that Jen will be able to take that. My apologies again, everybody, for dropping off, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
I'm so sorry, Ms. Shaw. Can you repeat your question?
Yes, sure, no problem. I'm curious to know the trend with the city's annual contribution to its pension fund, and curious to know where in the expenditure categories that line item would be embedded.
Sure. So it's in the, I think there's a benefits, well, there is a benefits section, which is where
Okay.
it would be included. And there's actually a pension meeting on Friday, tomorrow, where we'll get I think the actual ADEC. We're using what was projected for last year, for this year. It was based on a 6.75% annual rate of return. So, which dropped from the year before. So it's, more conservative this year. I'm not sure what will come out in the meeting tomorrow, but that's what we've baked in into the budget for next year.
Good to know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Jennifer, I have a couple of questions. One being, what is the vacancy rate that you did build in? I know it isn't everything. And I know as we go through the trends that you always close it. And I would probably say that you're more conservative than with the budgets versus the way the actuals are actually coming out. Do you have a percent that you use, or?
Well, we have right now in the budget, we have $1 million that we set aside for
Yes.
non-sworn individuals. So that remains intact from the prior years as well.
Okay.
And then for police, we have about 3.7 million that we're including in there for attrition. So we've bumped up attrition, but we've also bumped up overtime. So in all honesty,
Okay.
at the end of the day, it about nets out to, I think, where we'll end up next year for sure. And then in fire, we dropped that down to about $356,000. It's less than last year because they don't have the attrition that the other departments seem to have.
Okay.
Just quickly to go back to Mr. Waxenberg's question, I just wanted to update you a little bit here. So through March, we had 131 vacant non-sworn positions. We had 78 vacant police sworn positions and 4 sworn firefighter vacancies. And that's because in fire, we just had a new class start in the last couple of months of 20 folks that graduated. So that backfilled their vacancies there. So that's why there's only 4 there. And there is a new police class that is slated to start next month in May. So hopefully that number will, that 78 should drop significantly, although I'm not sure exactly where that will land.
Thank you. I did look at your trend, and when I looked at the trend, it did show that you definitely have made progress. It's not totally in line. It actually showed that you've made some progress in the budgeting, and I'm sure it's the additional pilot that came in this year. So in your FY24 this year, you're still showing that a gap that you need to cover with efficiencies of 4.7, where prior year you had a $10.9 million gap. And in the next out year of 2025, you have a 6.3. Last year you had a 13 million, and then in 2026 you had an 11.8, and this year and last year you had a 20 million. So I do think that close to the halfway mark, you've cut these down. So that's really good progress. And the other comment I wanted to make is that knowing that you've built in a contingency of $3 million, right? If you didn't have a contingency, that would close that gap and leave you at 1.7, because not everybody budgets contingency. Not that you shouldn't, you should, that's prudent, but that could close the gap. And we all know that your attrition rate has come in far higher than what has been budgeted. So with the 4.7, I'm not as nervous as seeing it. I wish we closed it. I wish it was I wish that strategically the budgeting changed so that you would close the gap rather than show that you're going to be have a gap. And because at this point, I don't think the existing efficiency mitigation plan will cover a 4.7 gap. If everything else stays constant, then what we have seen in the mitigation measures would not cover that gap. You agree?
Agree. Yep,
Okay.
I agree, Ms. Anderson. And one thing a couple things I'd like to add to that as we're talking about the 5-year plan.
Please do.
We also have, the PAYGO CapEx, as the mayor had mentioned, is up to 10.4 million in all 5 years. So that's a good thing. We have that. We talked about contingency in the out years as well. So we go from 3 million in 23 and 24 up to 4 million in 25 and 5.5 million in 26 and 27. So we put that in there because that is what the 5-year plan originally stated that went to MARB. So those numbers are included in there. We've also increased our the leases and purchases where we do our vehicle and technology purchases. So that is up around $3 to $3.5 million in the out years. So just with those 3 items right there, I feel like we could definitely move those levers. And as the mayor had mentioned, our property taxes, we're only taking into account a 1.5% increase for the rest of the out years. We also did not include an increase in motor vehicles for the first 2 years. We just don't know what's going to happen. And we're definitely conservative in our revenue assumptions, in including the prior year collections for taxes. We've kept that low. It's just such an unknown. It keeps surprising us, I think. And, it's a good number year after year, but we have not taken into account, we have not included into the out years that we would have such a significant collection of prior years as we had in the last 2 years, because we're just not sure if it's a blip in the radar or if it is something that will continue. So I think with those couple of items, we're going to continue to work on those mitigation measures that we put forward this year and that we report on every month. I definitely think we're going to see more out of that as well, but you're right, that those won't get us to 4 million or 13 million in the out years, but we're not losing sight of those either, and we'll continue to move forward on those as well.
Thank you. I am wondering if there's any way possible that you could provide, or maybe you already have it, is to insert the FY22 projections so that I'm not just looking at the actuals for 2021. I can see where you think you're going to land in your actuals for 22, even if it's just the high level one. It doesn't have to be, just the high level.
Sure. Do you want it so we'll meet in May? Do you want the March, the P9 numbers in there?
Yeah, for when we go to the full MARB.
Yeah, absolutely. We can do that.
Perfect. I don't know whose hand was up. My head was down, so I apologize. It's either Mark or Christine. Mark, go ahead.
Quickly, did anybody analyze, and I know that it's fresh off the printing press budget, to determine any hopefully positive impact with the state's budget on your state budget. Has anybody done any analysis of that as of yet to see if that would modify your budget at all?
The one that was passed, was it yesterday?
Yes.
No, I have not looked at that yet, but we'll definitely do that. We did include what the
pilot.
information that we received earlier this year. That's what is definitely included in there, but we'll take a look at that for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, you put your hand out, Ms. Shaw. You're good. Julian, do you
Yes.
have any questions?
Just one, well, one question and then a couple of clarifying points.
Thank you.
Getting back to Mira for a second, the $1.5 million pilot, is that the extent of any revenue the city gets from Mira in the course of a year? Is just the pilot?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's only included in the 23 budget. It is not included in any of the out years.
In the out years. Okay. And then I just wanted to clarify, I think Kim asked for FY22 projections in a revised, I think it would be the revised 5-year plan. Is that right, Kim?
Yes, please.
And so I just wanted to make sure that what's incorporated into that is the projected amount, not the year to date.
Will do.
Okay.
Yep.
And then one other point on the 5-year plan in terms of potential ways to close the projected gaps is that I see in your intergovernmental revenues, the reimbursement for motor vehicle tax, which is related to the cap, is held flat, which I think is a good position to take at this point. But there is the potential that that number could increase significantly because the FY23 amount, because of the lag in the calculation, which means that the FY23 amount is based on, we talked through this a while back. There's a year lag in the data that is built into those calculations. And so the increase in motor vehicle values is not reflected in the 23 number and could potentially go up in subsequent years. And that may have a material effect on your projected revenues going forward. But a wait and see attitude at this point, of course, is suitable.
And, oh, I'm sorry. To piggyback off of that really quick, the way that I calculated the out years for that included the increase in the grand list, but it also included our decrease in our property tax number, the city's property tax number. So I think Julian, when you and I had talked about it, I think we realized that it would, right, if we dropped our tax rate, then our reimbursement would be lower, I believe. So that is how I calculated it and included it, but if we'll get more, that would be great. But we definitely factored in the decrease in the property tax rate for the city.
Thanks.
Thank you, Julian. Any other questions? I have to say that I always look forward to looking at all the statistical analysis that you provide within here, from procurement stats to HR stats to your IT stats, accounts payable, this is really helpful, right up to, the number of calls that you get in the call center. This is great, great data to let you know that, okay, here's the outcomes that we have on the measures that follow with the budget. So this is really, really great information. So I do appreciate the hard work that everybody is putting into this, and I'm sure that that's going all the way down to each departmental level and providing us with a really good set of information and statistical analysis that we can take a look at, or at least the trends. I did, and also having the capital improvement plan, I think, was quite helpful. That is, one area, if you ever had to, rely on it, you could shift things around there. Within your capital improvement plan, if someone was to ask you, you know, are you in a catch-up mode? Are you in as far as capital improvements are needed, are you addressing the immediate emergencies, or are things deteriorating at a greater speed than you can invest in them?
That's a great question. I help with the budgeting side of it. I don't get involved in mostly the weeds of that, but I definitely think that we are, you know, plugging some holes, right? There's definitely things that are deteriorating, but I think we're
Sure.
catching up on that. And with the American Rescue Plan, there are projects we are able to get done that maybe we wouldn't have, you know, been able to get done without. So I feel like between the capital budget and that, we're on the course. We can always use more. There's always more projects we could do if we had more funding, but we're definitely making the most of what we have.
Okay. I don't have any other questions. If any of the members have any other questions. I think that this is a solid budget. I do not see anything that is really jumping out. I think that you've been prudent with your analysis. Again, my comment would always be is to close the gap in the out years. But I do know what the history has been, and I do understand the conservative nature of your budgeting style. With that, I am in favor of approving and moving forward for a motion if anybody else is in this committee. I'm looking for a motion to approve the mayor's recommended budget for FY23 for it to go to the full MARB.
So moved.
Thank you, Mark.
Second.
Thank you, Christine. Any discussion?
Just to say that I too need to compliment the hard work and the forthrightness, if you will, of the budget and all the backup documentation. It's a great help in determining the questions and getting the answers. So thank you very much.
Yep. And also for making good efforts to close those gaps in the out years. So that's quite helpful. And again, please pass on thank you to your entire team, because this makes our life a lot easier when we have the information beforehand instead of just hitting you with a whole bunch of questions. So thank you, Jennifer. Any other discussion? No. All in favor?
Aye.
Say aye. Aye. All right, we are all in favor. Thank you. And this budget has been approved, ready to go forth to the MARB in May. The next item I'm going to move to is on the agenda is to ask for a motion for the 5-year plan for fiscal year 23 to 27 as the mayor has proposed, and to move on to the full MARB. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mark.
Second, Bob White.
Thank you, Bob. Any discussion? All right, I hear none. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. All right, everybody is in favor. We shall move your budget and your 5-year plan up to the MARB for our May 17th meeting. I'd like to move back to the agenda and ask for the approval of the minutes, if we could, please, for March the 24th. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes for March 24th?
Sure.
Moved.
Well, Mark, thank you. Christine, second.
Sure.
Thank you. Any discussion? I hear none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, those minutes have been approved. The next item on the agenda is to review and discuss the possible action of labor contracts. And the first contract that we have to discuss is the Hartford Federation of Paraeducators. And let me just get to my notes. We have a tentative agreement included, and the contract that expires on June 30th of 2018. The proposed contract would be in effect through June 30th of 2024. It provides for no retroactive wage increases to the current year, but it does give a general wage increase that is retroactive to the beginning of the current fiscal year. The MARB has the authority to either approve or reject the contract if it wishes. If the MARB opts to take action on this contract, we have until June the 2nd to do so. The Board of Education has provided us with a package of information that in the agreement that will include a summary of the agreement, some impact, some fiscal impact, some comparables, recent turnover rates, and the Board of Ed staff as well as the labor attorney are with us today, and I would like to turn it over to you.
Hey, Melinda, if you don't mind, can I just get some context for this before
Sure.
we get into this? So this is now the fourth. Good morning, everybody. Sorry for that.
Hi, Mr. Penn, and great to see you.
Good to see you as well. So this is now the fourth labor contract that we've brought to you in the last 4 months. There are another 2 that we have settled in the last week or so that will come to you in May, bringing us to a total of 6. There are 3 more in semi-active discussion at this point, with a further 4th beyond that that have indicated to us that they only want to discuss wages and insurance. So there's a potential for that to go fairly quickly. So depending on who's around to negotiate during the summer, we could be at 10 contracts by sometime this fall, which would get us right back on track for where we're pretty much supposed to be in terms of having all of our contracts up to date. We've been very intentional about the way that we've been negotiating these in terms of the retro payouts back to the beginning of this year. As I've shared with you, because of the significant number of vacancies that we've had, we had anticipated some budgetary surpluses. This is a part of the way that we're reinvesting those surpluses, is to make sure that we take the retro in the current year so that we can deal with it now, as opposed to a retro, say, that would happen in the beginning of 22-23. That would have to be budgeted for otherwise. So we've been fairly intentional around that. So this negotiation had concluded a couple weeks ago. The union ratified fairly quickly. Our Board of Ed ratified it at their last full meeting, which was last week, after an executive session to discuss it that Attorney Kaufman had led. And with that as kind of background, let me turn it over to Attorney Kaufman to kind of take you through the nuts and bolts of the labor agreement.
All right, thank you, Chief Penn. Let me just go through this quickly because I know you do have the summary in front of you as well. This is a group there that are paraeducators, so they are the ones that are working directly with students, mostly special education students, either one-on-one or small group. There are approximately 420 of them at the moment. The prior contract, just for some background, was from 2015-2018. It did not include any step increases, and they already took a 0 wage increase for 17 and 18 in the last contract. And they have agreed to 3 more 0 GWI, no steps, getting them through 2021. And I do want to say, I mean, our unions really have worked with us and recognized the fiscal issues in Hartford, and almost to a T, the ones we've talked to, at least so far that we brought to you, have been willing to take zeros for the past years that we've been in arrears, which is why you're going to see slightly higher percentages than you might have seen otherwise for the years moving forward, because when we look at the contract overall, it's a 7-year contract. So what we have done for 21-22 retroactively for this year, it's a 2% GWI for everybody, and all members not on top step will be moving 1 step. For 22-23, it's a 2% GWI, and again, all members not on top step moving 1 step. And then 23-24, we've agreed to a 3% GWI, but there will be no step movement for that year. And I've given you the financial breakdown, but you'd have to turn to Chief Penn if you want that explained. So, some other cost measures that do have some cost to them, but again, we feel that these are a big investment in our paraeducators. Increasing the tuition reimbursement rate for college courses from $300, which was currently in their contract, to $675, which aligns with what is now in the teacher's contract. These are our pipeline for becoming teachers. If they can take these, those that are interested, that are already in our system, know the students, can take these credits and become our newest teachers. So that is one of the reasons behind that. And then increasing stipends for covering other duties. These are fairly minimal increases, but for substitute teaching for a day, the stipend is increased from 60 to 80. For covering a single specials class like gym, art, one of those things, the stipend is increased from 10 to 15. And then increasing the stipend for substituting for a nurse, which we believe rarely happens, but is in the contract, we increased it from 60 to 80 as well. And you do have the financial breakdown of that. As to the insurance, this was a group that was hybrid, with some of this group on the PPO and others on the high deductible health plan. We are moving them all to the high deductible health plan as of July 1st, 2022. Similar language to what you've seen before, also moving to determine the cost shares based on the Anthem allocation rate plus not more than 4% instead of the fully insured equivalent rate. And moving up the cost share percentage by 1/2 point. So July 1, 2022, it'll be 10.5, and July 1, 2023, it'll be 11%. One new thing that we are adding into let me go back for a minute. For those that are moving from the PPO to the high deductible health plan, in order to help out those members, we did agree for those members that are transitioning to do a 75% contribution to the high deductible health plans deductible for the first year for those members. Those members that are either coming in new or are currently on the high deductible plan will remain at the 50% contribution. And then moving forward, the year after, everybody will be at the 50% contribution. One other thing that this union asked for was a stipend for them not using the health insurance from the board, and we agreed that that was reasonable, and we did add a $1,000 per school year eligible stipend for those employees that do not take the district's health insurance due to complying with HIPAA and Section 125 and various other laws. They do have to show proof of enrollment in another group health insurance in order to be eligible for that. And we did need to allow them, if they lose that other health insurance, to be able to come back into our program, and then their stipend would be prorated for the time that they're not on that. They did agree that members hired after this fiscal year will no longer be eligible for retiree insurance coverage as well. And you have the overall cost impact as estimated for the health insurance changes. All the other changes are really minor, fixing typos, complying with Janus, those kind of things. So I could go over them if you want, but they seem pretty self-explanatory. So with that, if you have questions.
I have no questions, any of the board members, and I'm glad to see that you were able to get this done.
Yes. So are we.
I was waiting for Mr. Waxenberg. Go ahead.
I really don't have any questions. Is more of a comment. Obviously, my background is in public education for years, and these groups of individuals are the heart and soul of support for the academic needs of a teacher as well as for the students. For up to me, looking at some of the advancements, I would make it even more, only because I notice, unfortunately, you have a percentage of vacancy that is high. I mean, it's over 10% annually. I don't know what the attrition rate is, if it's a constant 10% or people are moving in and out, but I would encourage, for lack of a better term, that collective bargaining is not always the remedy for looking at difficulties that exist within an urban setting. Getting together with well-intended people to determine other ways of incentivizing people to stay or come into the profession. I like the idea of the increase in the tuition. I personally think it should be more, but that's neither here nor there. You know, it's not my position as a negotiator for years to overrule somebody that's negotiated in good faith on the union side. So I will be supporting this because of its fair and equitable way in which it was done. But I do want to say that I have concerns about those vacancy rates, and we can talk to Chief Penn later on, you know, as we go through this, as well as the insurance, which, you know, I have a bug about. But that said, I do want to commend Chief Penn or whoever is involved in getting all these contracts up to date, because there was just such a lack of, I don't want to say focus, but a lack of urgency when it comes to the collective bargaining agreements that now are before us. And I appreciate that, because I do think they need to be brought up. And I do want to commend you as well as the union for taking all of these. I mean, these are the lowest paid, I want to say the lowest, but one of the lowest paid groups, unionized groups in the educational setting. And for them to take those zeros and still maintain their positions says something about them personally and about their willingness to stay in the positions regardless of the salaries that they may or may not be receiving. So I want to commend you on getting the job done. But I also want to say I would have been more benevolent. But that's the union side of me, not the management side of me.
Ms. Kennison, can I provide a comment, because I think it ties into what Mr. Waxenberg just asked. Well, first of all, thank you. I mean, I'm the face you see, but I'm one of but a team that have been driving this process over the last couple of months. And, you know, kudos also to Attorney Kaufman, who's been sticking with us on all these negotiations. It's a lot of late nights. More directly to the point that you raised, one of the things that we just announced to all employees is retention bonuses into next year for those that stick around.
Fabulous.
It's $1,000 for teachers and nurses, and $500 for anybody who's in a non-certified position. And that we realized that was something that is an applicable use of our ESSER ARP money that we can do.
Right.
And try to address some of the turnover rate issue and some of the retention issue that we've been having for the past couple of years is going to be through that process. So that was announced to employees. Forgive me if it was last week or the week before, they're kind of blending together, but I think it was last week that we made that announcement and to everybody to make them aware that that was going to happen. So if you end the school year with us and you're back next year, that bonus will apply to you. That retention bonus will apply.
Great news.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Move to accept.
Thank you, Mark. How about a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Bob. Any other discussion? I hear none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mark, did I hear an aye?
Yes, you did.
Thank you. All right,
All right, thank you,
the
everyone.
motion passes. Thank you. Next
Thank
item
you.
on the, thank you. The next item on the agenda is to discuss Local 1716 Council number 4 and a tentative agreement in this for this contract that has expired on June 30th, 2021. The proposed contract would be in effect through December 31st of 2024. It provides a general wage increase that is retro to the beginning of this calendar year, and the MARB has the authority to approve it, to reject the contract if we wish. If the MARB opts to take action on this contract, it has until May 21st to do so. The city has provided us with this information on this agreement, with the tentative agreement, a summary, fiscal impact, and comparables. And the city can come forward and give us some explanations on this contract.
Ms. Kennison? So I also have Deb Carabello with me on the line. She is in HR, so she's here to also answer any questions that you might have that I am unable to answer. So at a very high level, the wage increases are just straight GWIs. So the for 2022, there will be a 2% GWI that will be retroed back to January 1st of 2022. The 23 amount will be 2.5%, and then 24 will be 2.5%. These increases are included in our forecasted projections. So we wanted to be sure that they're not sitting in the individual departments, but they are sitting in an account as a holding place in case something changes, but they are there. This, our 2022 budget actually included a 1.5% increase. So for the full year, so that offsetting the 2% for half a year will get us, this shouldn't be a real additional cost in 2022. The only change to the HSA funding is timing. So that is in the summary, but I just wanted to point out that it's just timing. I think it's going from 3 payments to 2 payments. So it'll be half a year. The HSA funding will happen. We did add call takers, and the option to have call takers instead of all dispatchers in our ES&T center. This is due mainly to the fact that dispatchers are very difficult to recruit. So we're trying to do something a little bit different, and I believe the call takers then can be trained to become dispatchers. So it's just kind of a creative way to solve that problem. I didn't budget any call takers in this analysis because we don't know how many that will be. You know, we could have, instead of 5 dispatchers, 5 call takers, but since we don't know, everything that's included in here is still assuming that everyone is a dispatcher and not a call taker.
Okay.
There are referral bonuses included in here. Again, not included because I have no idea how many recruits or how many referrals we'll get, but it wouldn't be a material amount regardless of that number. But I wanted to point that out, that it's $500 if a dispatcher recruits another dispatcher and $250 for call takers. And everything else in the contract is really just cleanup, wording cleanup and that kind of thing. Highlights outside of that aren't included in the contract, but just so that you know, our analysis only takes into account general fund positions. The other positions that are in here that aren't general fund positions are mainly our early childhood education teachers. So those are all grant funded, so they're not included in our analysis, but the grants can handle those. There's about 235 positions that were included in this. And as of December 2021, which was when our data was pulled as of December 2021 to coincide with our budget, there were 35 vacant positions, but all of those positions are included in this analysis. So this is a very conservative analysis, assuming every position is filled all year. The steps will continue as they were set up in the previous contract. So we did include the steps as though they were an additional cost, as that is how, you know, we've done the other analyses in the past, but those are also fully budgeted. I've already said that, and okay, so those are my updates.
Thank you. I do not have any questions. Do any of the members, or does Julian? No questions. Julian, no questions either?
I'm all set, thank you.
All right. All right, I support this contract. Can I get a motion?
It
Oh,
looks like
wait,
Mr. Waxenberg.
Mark, I just saw that when I picked my head up, sorry. Mark.
Just quickly, in the contract, section 7 lists the salary increases, and then your appendix E2 lists the previous years. Somehow, if you and the union can get together, and so that it's like bifurcated. So if you could put it all in one, maybe section E2 would be the one that you'd refer to, rather than having it in 2 different places, that would be of help. And I just want to let the MARB members know that of the 10 years that are noted in this contract, 5 have been zeros.
Wow.
That's significant.
Wow.
So I have to, again, give credit to the union for contributing to the difficulties that Hartford was having over those years. And I'm very pleased to see them coming out of it and benefiting a little bit along the way. So congratulations on getting this done. and to both sides, because it's obviously important. You too, obviously, based on what you said, have a vacancy rate of over 10%. Those are issues that need to be dealt with. I'm sure hopefully you and the mayor and your cabinet will do so, but in any event, I'm full support of this.
Thank you, Mr. Waxenberg. Any other questions? Can I get a motion, please, to approve Local 1716? Council
I
4,
guess I'm making them all day, huh?
please do.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you.
Yeah, right.
Thanks.
Thanks, Bob.
I'll second.
Thank you, Christine. Any other discussion? I hear none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right. That motion carries. It's all approved. Now we are down to agenda item 6, and it is the budget mitigation measures. Jennifer, if you want to bring us up to date, please.
Sure, thank you. We sent those as kind of an update, but there are really no significant updates this month. And we've been very busy between ARPA reporting and budget reporting, so there hasn't been a significant movement. But we definitely updated on collections of non-revenue or non-property tax revenues and those kind of things. So those are still moving forward. But outside of that, I don't have any significant updates this month.
And understandable. No questions? I have none. All right. Any other related business that we need to discuss? I do see one other attachment that's included in here. Was that maybe this was just not, part of a contract. Sorry, might be misplaced in my package. Julian, is there another?
No, there was a follow-up item that Mr. Penn provided in response to a question.
Is that the employee
So
contribution HSA? Okay, thank you.
Correct. So that's provided for informational purposes.
Okay, thank you. I guess I had one question on that. Would it be helpful to have the total number of employees that you have that is aligned then with the total number who are contributing or participating in the plan? Not just the percent that. That's what I was thinking. Mark? And
No,
Mr. Penn? No? You're fine?
I think it does have that. I think it's somewhat, at this point in time, it's somewhat incomplete, obviously, because you just have a new unit fully coming into the plan. So it's, but I will say, if I can, it's concerning. It's concerning because you have groups that are at 11, 12. I'm surprised that the teachers are at such a low percentage of participation because they're fully into the plan now, I believe. But the ones that are migrating into that plan, it's kind of if it's 4 out of 11. So the paraprofessional side, until next year, you won't really know what the participation rate is. And it's only a theory, is that what a lot of them, I shouldn't say a lot, what individuals may be doing is just taking the board's contribution, not making their own contribution, and using it to offset their medical costs, which is one of my major concerns. But that's a debate for another day. But I do want to thank Secretary Penn for giving this, and it does raise, like I said, concerns about percentages of participation. I noticed that the use of and I don't have it directly in front of me, but off the top of my head, I do notice that the percentage of usage over and above the, is it 50% or something like that? In a lot of cases, 40 or 50%. I don't, that's a cumulative, as you know, one individual might, because of one experience, be at whatever the percentage is or number is, whereas another one may not have gone anywhere for the year for their health care. So, but I do want to thank Secretary Penn for providing that information. Yeah, I mean, just quickly, the teachers total with coverage is 1191, totals contributing 435, 36% are not, are only contributing. I find it's not disturbing. It's just they're relying on the board's contribution rather than their own contribution, which is troublesome. But then again, once you reach your deductible, was it 90-10 or 80-20 on your plan, Mr. Penn?
For post deductible,
Yes.
I believe it's 90-10.
Yeah, 90-10. So, you know, that's a good benefit, but
If I could make a quick comment, I was kind of surprised too at the low participation rates, especially by some of the higher wage earners in this table.
exactly.
But I had already asked prior to you making this request for Anthem's information on the average deductible expended by each of those groups. So as of, for instance, when I look at the teachers, the average deductible expenditure was 59%,
Right.
meaning that if your deductible was $1,000 on average, you expended $590. If your deductible was $2,000, you were expending 59% of that.
Right.
You know, and similarly, so we tracked it sort of independent of what the total deductible was, but we measured it on each individual. So kind of to your point, if 50% of your deductible is already being covered by the school district, you have a 9% variance on average to that.
Right.
Your average is somewhere going to be $180 if you're a single, or it's going to be $360 if you're a family or you know, a plus one. So the question then becomes, are you living off the district's contribution because you're not hitting the full value of your deductible anyway? And that's probably something we can't get to without going individual by individual and asking, you know, what's your personal financial information when it comes to healthcare, right? But, you know, it was interesting to me that, you know, we only had one group that was really high in the contribution rates, or technically two, I guess. But for the most part, they're right around 50%, 60%. In terms of the number of percentage of that unit that's actually contributing their own dollars on a payroll deduction going forward. And that implies to me in some respects that maybe there's a good opportunity for a re-education around that money if people believe, for instance, that the money doesn't roll over from year to year. If they have been more familiar with a flexible spending account where that would have been the case, not realizing, no, this is your money, this is in your bank account, you get to use it going forward. But yeah, it was a little bit alarming seeing the fact that we, you know, even at the higher wage groups, we don't have a high level of participation in terms of deferring money out of your paycheck into the HSA.
Yeah, I agree. And the lower the, which is just reaffirms, that was a surprise. But if you look at, for example, your paraeducators, of course, 12 out of 61, the lower wage earners are more likely than not, and this is just my supposition, not to contribute and to use the money given by the employer. But like you said, unless you could do it an individual by individual, my only concern in plans like this is, I call them individual healthcare plans, where people are doing their own individual healthcare. A lot of times, if they have to do an out-of-pocket expense, they'll take a Tylenol rather than going and see the doctor, you know, which is dangerous. But that's neither here nor there, and it's for a discussion. And maybe, like you said, if we look at the state plan and it's commensurate, if not better than, you know, conversations can occur after that. So, but I do want to thank you for all the information. And it should, like you said, should start a discussion among these groups to maybe clarify some things, because my concern always has been healthcare being a major part of a person's package, not just the wages. Healthcare, I think, is probably more important to workers nowadays than the wages. So education and things of that nature, I think, are important. And I'm glad to hear that you're considering that.
Sure.
Thank you. Any other discussion, questions? Julian, do you have anything else?
Not today, thanks.
Okay. All right, I think that completes our business for today. Can I get a motion to adjourn today?
So moved.
Thank you, Bob. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mark. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you all. Appreciate your time and the good work of the city of Hartford with all of this detailed information that you provided us on your contracts and in your budget.